The wind arrived first, a low, aching sound that pressed the prairie grass flat, as if the land itself were afraid. Ione Calder drew her wool shawl tighter around her shoulders, squinting toward the darkening line of the horizon where the sky had dulled into the color of old, tarnished iron. An hour earlier, the wagon wheel had split straight through, and now her two horses stood restless, ears twitching at noises she could not hear. Traveling alone had been a mistake. The station master in Fort Worth had warned her, but grief had a way of dulling good sense. It had been 3 months since the fever claimed Cale Thorne, and in that time she had sold everything: the small ranch, the furniture, even her mother's china. What remained were a handful of treasured books wrapped in oilcloth and a few coins stitched carefully into her corset. Santa Fe had once felt like rescue. Her Aunt Martha kept a boarding house there and had written twice, promising a room and safety. Now, staring at the ruined wheel, Ione wondered if she would ever reach Santa Fe at all. The cold fell suddenly, like a stone dropped into a deep well. She had known blue northerners before, but this one carried a different weight. The air itself seemed to lock in place, turning her breath into pale clouds that hovered, then shattered. Her fingers, already stiff inside worn gloves, fumbled with the rope as she tried to rig a makeshift travois from the broken boards. That was when she noticed him. He sat astride a paint horse, as though horse and rider were one body, watching her from a low rise 50 yards away. There was no mistaking what he was. The way he held himself said enough. A buffalo robe lay heavy across his shoulders, a lance resting easily in his grip. Ione's heart pounded, but she kept working. Running would have been pointless. Her horses were skittish, while his mount stood calm and strong. The warrior rode closer, stopping just beyond pistol range. He was young, perhaps 30 winters, with a scar running from his left ear down to his jaw. When he spoke, his English was careful but clear, each word chosen with intent. "Storm's coming, a bad one. You stay here, you die." Ione's hands froze on the rope. "My wagon's broken." "I see that." He scanned the horizon, then looked back at her. His eyes were dark, steady. "My name is Kelton," he said. "Stone Shoulder. You're the woman who sold books in Fort Worth." The recognition startled her. She had sold them at Patterson's General Store 2 weeks earlier, tears slipping down her face as the clerk counted the money. "How do you—" "I was there. I bought the one about the pilgrim." He shifted in the saddle. "You have maybe an hour before the storm swallows this land. My band camps near Agua Dulce Creek, half a day's ride, closer than any white town." Ione's throat tightened. She understood what he was offering: shelter, survival, and she understood what people said such offers might cost. The wedding ring on her finger suddenly felt heavy. She was 24, newly widowed, alone on the frontier. She had heard the stories about women taken by Comanche warriors. Not all ended in horror, but enough did. The first snowflakes drifted down, large, slow, harmless looking. "I have money," she said. Kelton shook his head. "Snow doesn't care about money." Her horses whinnied, pulling against their ties. The cold deepened. Her feet had already gone numb, and the storm had barely begun. She thought of Kyle, of how he had held her hand at the end, whispering for her to be brave. Brave. The word burned bitter on her tongue. She swallowed hard and forced the next words out, despising herself for them. "I can offer more than money. For safe passage, for shelter." Kelton went completely still. For a long moment, only the wind spoke. Then he dismounted in a single smooth motion and walked toward her. Ione straightened, though every instinct told her to run. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, his face was weathered by sun and wind, younger than she had first believed. His expression was unreadable. "You think that?" he said quietly, almost gently. "You think that's why I'd save you?" The gesture he made needed no explanation. "No," he said firmly. "You owe me nothing. Not money. Not that." He pulled the buffalo robe from his shoulders and held it out. The fur was thick, well cured, worth more than everything she owned. "Take it. You need it." Her hands trembled as she accepted it. "Why?" she asked. "The wind has laws," Kelton replied. "When one person freezes, everyone freezes. That's the first law." He glanced at the shattered wagon, then at her frightened horses. "Leave the wagon. We take what matters. The rest belongs to the snow." "Horses," Kelton said. "What you carry close. The rest belongs to the snow." Ione Calder opened her mouth to argue, to claw back some small piece of what the road had taken from her. The wind answered first. It rose, howling across the plains like something alive, screaming through the open land. Snow slashed sideways, biting exposed skin like needles. Her horses reared in panic. One tore free, bolting only a few yards before stopping, confused, trembling. Kelton moved without urgency. He caught the loose horse with the calm precision of a man who had done it 1,000 times. He spoke softly in Comanche, low sounds meant for ears that understood fear. The animal settled beneath his hands. Then he was beside her again. He lifted her onto his paint horse as if she weighed nothing at all. She should have protested, should have insisted on dignity. But her legs had gone numb, useless beneath her. "Hold tight," he said, swinging up behind her. His body took the worst of the wind. "We ride hard now." They gathered her remaining horses, tying them to lead ropes. Ione clutched the oilcloth bundle holding her books and the small bag with her personal things. Everything else, the wagon, the supplies she'd bought in Fort Worth, vanished behind them. Any hope of an easy road disappeared into a wall of white. The storm struck in full force as they rode, wind strong enough to strip flesh from bone, snow so thick that breathing became a deliberate act. Ione pressed her face into the buffalo robe, grateful for its warmth, grateful too for the solid presence behind her. This man who seemed to know every rise and hollow of the land, even when it had been erased. Time lost meaning. There was only the rhythm of the horse, the scream of the wind, the burn of cold in her lungs. Sometimes Kelton spoke, warning her to duck or lean. Once he halted completely, dismounting to study something buried beneath the snow. When he returned, his brow was dark. "Markers are gone," he said. "But I know other ways." He mounted again, though tension coiled through him. "There's a canyon, old campground. We try for that." Darkness closed in early, or perhaps it had never truly left. The world narrowed to the space between her face and the horse's neck. She could no longer feel her feet. Her fingers barely clung to the saddle horn. Behind her, Kelton fell silent, save for murmured words to the horses. Then the horse stopped. Ione lifted her head, disoriented. They stood at what looked like solid ground, but Kelton was already sliding down, pulling her with him. "Canyon," he said, though doubt edged his voice. "Should see the edge." They didn't. The earth gave way. Ione felt herself falling. Kelton's arm locked around her waist. The horse screamed. Snow, rock, and sky spun together. She thought wildly that this was how it ended, not frozen on the plains, but shattered at the bottom of some unseen pit. They struck a slope instead of a cliff, sliding and tumbling through brush that tore at skin and cloth alike. When they finally stopped, Ione lay gasping in the snow, certain something must be broken. But Kelton was already on his feet, calling to the horses with that same steady voice. Slowly, she realized, with stunned disbelief, that she was whole. "The canyon," he said. Wonder colored his words now. "We're in it. The storm drove us straight here." He helped her stand. "Come. The overhang's close. I've seen worse than this." She wanted to laugh. Worse than this. But her throat burned raw, and the dark pressed in too close. Above them, the storm raged on. But down in the canyon, the wind lost its teeth. They stumbled forward, Kelton guiding her until stone rose up before them. A deep overhang, sheltered and old. Fire rings scarred the ground, proof that travelers had survived here long before them. As Kelton secured the horses and gathered wood, Ione sank against the rock wall, pulling the buffalo robe tight around her. She was alive, against all reason. Alive because a Comanche warrior had asked nothing in return, because he had stripped himself of warmth and ridden into a white hell for a stranger. The first flames flickered under Kelton's patient hands, and Ione felt tears freeze on her cheeks as the fire took hold. She was falling again, but this time into something she had no words for. The fire took life slowly, coaxed from damp wood, patience, and stubborn will. Kelton fed it pine needles and thin curls of inner bark kept dry in a leather pouch. He breathed gently into the flame until orange light crept up the thicker branches. The rock overhang caught the heat and pushed it back towards them. And for the first time in hours, Ione Calder felt something other than the dead grip of cold. Her hands trembled violently as she held them toward the fire. Not just from the chill, her body was fighting shock, muscles locking and releasing in sharp, uneven waves. Kelton noticed at once. Moving without haste, he reached into his pack and pulled free strips of dried meat and a leather flask. "Eat slow," he said, pressing the jerky into her shaking fingers. "The body needs fuel to make heat." The meat was tough, salted, mixed with something faintly sweet. Berries, maybe. Chewing took effort, but the motion anchored her. This was real. She had fallen into a canyon during a blizzard and survived. Kelton built the fire higher, then began shaping their shelter. He showed her how to stack stones to reflect warmth, how to position the horses to block the worst of the wind. Every movement was precise, practiced. How many storms had he lived through like this? "Your horses," he said, kneeling to check their legs. Good animals. Scared, but not broken. His hands moved along each limb with surprising gentleness. "The spotted mare, she's strong. Tried to run back into the storm. Death instinct." "Sometimes animals do that," Ione said, forcing down another bite of jerky. "Like people." He glanced at her, something unreadable passing through his dark eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "Like people." Even here, the wind found them, slipping through cracks in the stone to steal what warmth it could. Kelton showed her how to pack dried grass and mud into the gaps, how to drape the buffalo robe to trap heat. Sensation crept back into her fingers, sharp, biting pain as blood returned to frozen skin. "You said another storm was coming," she said, remembering his warning. "A second one." Kelton studied the narrow slice of sky beyond the overhang. "See those clouds?" he said. "Low and heavy like a pregnant buffalo. This storm is the runner. The real one comes before dawn." He added more wood to the fire. "But we're lucky. This place is held against worse." He set a small iron pot over the flames. Snow melted into water. He added strips of dried meat and a root scraped clean with his knife. As it cooked, the smell made her stomach tighten with hunger she hadn't noticed before. "How did you know?" she asked. "The storm. It came so fast." Not fast, he said, stirring with a spoon worn smooth by years of use. The signs were there 3 days ago. Birds flying wrong, horses uneasy for no reason, air tasting like copper. My mother taught me. She read weather the way white people read books. The word books pulled her thoughts back to her bundle. Ione drew it closer, checking the oilcloth. Damp, but intact. Her last treasures. Kelton noticed. The Pilgrim book, he said. You sold it too cheap. I sold them all too cheap. The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. Hunger doesn't bargain well. Why Santa Fe? My aunt runs a boarding house there, she said. She offered to take me in. She stopped. Firelight caught on the ring at her finger. After my husband died. Fever. 3 months ago. Kelton nodded, asked nothing more. He ladled the stew into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. The broth burned her throat, but it was the best thing she had ever tasted. Warmth spread outward from her stomach, and the shaking finally eased. This law of the wind, she said softly. The one you spoke of. It's real to your people? He almost smiled. Bad luck to let someone freeze. Their spirit stays in the wind. Makes more storms. Practical, she said. And right. Then quieter. But I offered. Heat rose in her cheeks. Nothing to do with the fire. You offered what you thought I wanted, she said. What you feared I would take. His voice stayed calm. No judgment. That's what your people teach about mine. Some truth in it, she said. Some lies. Men are men, he replied. No matter the tribe. A wolf howled somewhere beyond the canyon, long, lonely. Another answered. Closer. Ione's horses shifted nervously in the dark, but Kelton's paint horse stood steady, ears forward, unafraid. Wolves hunt the edges of storms, he said. They look for the weak, but they don't like fire. Don't like the smell of men either. We're safe if we stay sharp. He reached into his pack and drew out more supplies. A wicked-looking hatchet, coils of rawhide, what appeared to be a small sewing kit. Everything showed wear, but nothing was neglected. These were the tools of a man who lived prepared. Tomorrow, if the storm breaks, I can fix your wagon wheel, he said. Maybe. Depends what's left. He glanced at her. Or you come with me to my band's winter camp. There are women there. Children, he added. It's safe. You could rest. Choose your path once the weather clears. Why? The question slipped from Ione Calder before she could stop it. Why help me at all? Kelton fed another branch into the fire and said nothing for a long moment. 6 winters ago, he said at last, I was young, proud, rode too far hunting and ignored the signs. A blizzard caught me near the Brazos. I would have died, but a farmer found me. German man, big beard like a bear. He could have left me, could have shot me. Many would have. Instead, he dragged me to his barn, kept me alive, fed me soup his wife made. He touched the scar along his jaw. This came from falling off his roof when I helped fix it in spring. Payment for the soup. Something like a smile almost reached his mouth. So now I watch for fools and storms. The law of the wind, he said, but also my debt. Another howl rolled through the canyon, closer this time. Then another. Several voices now. Kelton rose, hatchet loose in his hand, and walked to the edge of the firelight. He spoke in Comanche, low and firm, as if addressing the darkness itself. When he returned, he dragged armfuls of juniper branches behind him. Help me, he said. Juniper smoke keeps them honest. They built a second, smaller fire at the mouth of the shelter, green wood sending up thick, biting smoke. Ione's eyes stung, but she understood the purpose. No wolf would cross that wall of scent and fire. As they worked, Kelton taught her small things: how to judge good firewood by its weight, how to read wind direction from smoke, how to bank coals so they would last through the night. He taught patiently, practically, never assuming she knew nothing. "You're English," Ione said. "Where did you learn it?" "My mother," he replied, arranging stones around the fire. "She lived at the San Antonio Mission when she was a girl. The priests taught her letters, numbers, their God. When she was 15, she ran away, came back to the people, married my father. She kept the learning, taught her children." "Knowledge is a weapon," Ione said. "They can't take it, even if they take everything else." The wolves circled twice more, their eyes flashing green in the firelight, but they never came closer. Eventually, they drifted away to hunt elsewhere. Above them, the storm still raged, but down in the canyon, guarded by stone and flame, they had carved out a pocket of survival. "Sleep," Kelton said finally. "I'll watch first." "I can take a turn." "No," he said. "You almost froze. The body needs rest to heal. Sleep now. Argue later." Too exhausted to fight him, Ione wrapped herself in the buffalo robe near the fire. The ground was hard, despite the pine needles he'd spread, but compared to the killing cold beyond the canyon, it felt like comfort. Through heavy eyes, she watched him tend the fire, check the horses, stand watch against the dark. Just before sleep claimed her, she remembered his warning. "The second storm," she murmured. "How bad?" Kelton studied the low clouds, barely visible past the firelight. "Bad enough, but we have shelter, fire, food. We survived the worst already." He paused. "Unless those aren't wolves following our trail." Ione sat up at once. "What do you mean?" "At your wagon," he said calmly. "Boot prints in the snow, not soldiers. Wrong pattern. Maybe trappers, maybe hired men." He settled back against the rock wall, rifle across his knees. "Don't worry tonight. The storm covers all trails." "But tomorrow," he added with a shrug, "we see what the wind brings." She lay back down, but sleep came slower now. Hired men. Someone tracking her. Who would bother following a widow bound for Santa Fe, unless... The coins sewn into her corset suddenly felt heavy as stones. Not a fortune, but enough? Enough for someone to notice when she sold the ranch. Enough to make her worth following. The fire crackled softly. Kelton hummed under his breath. Low, steady. A prayer, perhaps, or a lullaby. Despite her fear, Ione drifted at last. Tonight she was alive. Tonight she was warm. Tonight, a stranger who owed her nothing stood guard against wolves, storms, and whatever darker things followed human tracks through the snow. The second storm struck just before dawn, exactly as Kelton had said it would. By then, Ione Calder was buried in a deep, bone-heavy sleep, worn down past dreaming. When dreams did come, they were fragments, books wrapped in oilcloth, the weight of a buffalo robe, and wind singing laws older than memory itself. The fire had burned down to embers when she woke. Small red coals glimmered in the dark like watchful eyes. Kelton sat where she had last seen him, rifle laid across his knees. As she stirred, he added wood, coaxing the flames back to life, while the second storm roared beyond their shelter. The wind tore through the canyon like something possessed, screaming as if every devil in hell had been loosed at once. "How long did I sleep?" she asked. "Most of the night," he replied. "Sun's close. You just won't see it through this." He nodded toward the white wall swallowing the canyon mouth. "Hunger?" Her stomach answered for her. Kelton passed her more jerky, and a flat cake pressed from seeds and dried berries. dense, faintly sweet. It filled the hollow places inside her better than bread ever could. "My husband," she said suddenly, the words surprising her as they left her mouth. "Cale Thorne. He died of fever in October. Sweating sickness, the doctor called it, though he didn't truly know. 3 days," she continued, staring into the fire. "From first cough to—" She stopped. "I'm sorry, you didn't ask. Sometimes the dead need to be spoken of," Kelton said gently. "It lets them rest easier. He was a good man, quiet, liked reading in the evenings." She drew her knees up. "We had 40 acres near Weatherford. Nothing grand. But enough," she went on. "He planned to buy cattle come spring, build a proper ranch, had it all mapped out in a little notebook, where to graze, where to dig a new well, dreams written in pencil." A gust forced snow into the shelter. Kelton adjusted the hanging blanket to block it. "After he died, his brother came from Dallas," Ione said. "Told me a woman couldn't run a ranch alone. Offered to buy me out. Half of what it was worth. Said I should be grateful for even that." Bitterness crept into her voice. "So I sold. Took what I could. Bought supplies for Santa Fe." "I thought I was being brave," she said softly. "Turns out I was just foolish." "Not foolish," Kelton replied, stirring the fire. "Desperate. Desperation makes all of us smaller than we are." She studied his face in the firelight. "Did you have a family? A wife? Children?" Something passed through his eyes. "Had a wife?" "Winter fever took her 2 summers ago. No children came before she left." He fell silent for a moment. "Her name was Hootsu. It means bird song. She laughed like water over stones." They sat without speaking. 2 people who knew the weight of absence. Gradually, the storm began to loosen its grip. Gray light filtered into the canyon. Not dawn, but the promise of it. "Tell me about the books," Kelton said. "Which ones did you keep?" Ione carefully unwrapped the oilcloth bundle. "Just 3. I couldn't sell them all." She lifted them one by one. "The Bible, my mother's. Pilgrim's Progress, though I sold you the better copy. And this." She cradled a water-stained volume. "Robinson Crusoe." "Cale read it to me when we were courting," she said. "Silly to keep it, I suppose. But—" "Not silly," Kelton said. "Books carry more than words." He examined Crusoe with care. "This man on the island, he learns how to live alone." "Yes," she said, "but he isn't truly alone. He saves a native man from cannibals, names him Friday." She paused, suddenly aware of the shape the words made. "They become friends, partners in survival." Kelton smiled, the first full smile she had seen from him. "Friday," he said. "Strange name for a man. Did this Crusoe ever ask his real one?" "I don't think he did." "Typical," he said, amused rather than angry. "My father's name was Poppy Two Beatsy," Kelton added. "It means big ego. No white man ever asked." "They just called him Chief," he said lightly, "as if we're all chiefs." He handed the book back to her, firelight catching the worn pages. "But this Crusoe," Kelton said, "he learns. He changes, in his own way." He nodded once. "It's complicated. Good stories always are." The light strengthened as the morning crept in. Snow still drifted down, but the fury had bled out of the storm, leaving only a steady hush. Kelton rose, stretching muscles stiff from a night of watch. "Come," he said. "I'll teach you how to read this land. A useful skill when you're traveling." They stepped to the edge of the overhang. The canyon had changed overnight into something almost unreal. White drifts shaped by the wind into strange forms, ice clinging to the rock walls like rows of diamond teeth. "See there," Kelton said, pointing. "Clouds with dark bellies still carry snow, but look east. Those are breaking apart, like buffalo shedding winter fur. Storm moves on by midday. He showed her how to read the wind written into the drifts, how to tell fresh powder from ice hidden beneath. He taught her how snow spoke underfoot, soft whispers meaning safe cold, sharp cries warning of deep freeze. He gave the knowledge freely, without asking anything in return. "Why do you trust me?" Ione Calder asked. "I could be lying. I could have people following me for reasons I won't say." "Could be," he answered calmly. "But lies sit different on the face than truth." "You carry grief," he said. "Not secrets, and the men following you, if they are not your friends." "No," she said. "I don't even know who they'd be. I was careful leaving town. Paid cash, kept quiet." She hesitated, then touched her corset where the coins were sewn. "I have money." "Not much," she added. "But maybe enough. Someone could have noticed. Thought a widow alone was easy prey." "Not so easy," Kelton said. "You survived the storm." "Because of you." "Because you were wise enough to accept help," he replied. "Pride kills more people than cold." He studied the clearing sky. "If these men come, they'll wait for fair weather. That gives us time. My band's winter camp is closer than any town. My uncle is the chief, Redhorn, a fair man. He'd give you shelter while you choose your path." "And if I bring danger to your people?" she asked. Kelton's expression hardened. "Then we deal with danger. We have practice." They spent the morning getting ready to move. Kelton taught her how to pack for speed instead of comfort. What could be abandoned, and what might save a life. Her trunk of household things would have to stay behind. But he helped her wrap the books in better protection, and divided her coins into several hidden places. "Never keep all your wealth in one spot," he said. "Makes you guard that place too closely. Better to lose a little than everything." The horses had weathered the storm well, though they were hungry and restless. Kelton produced grain from packs that seemed endless, speaking softly to each animal as it ate. Ione noticed the mare nudging his shoulder like an old companion. "She likes you better than me," she said. "Horses know who understands them," he replied. "You think too much. Worry about what they think. Horses don't think like that. Just be. They accept." He adjusted the mare's blanket. People could learn from horses. By noon, the storm had burned itself out, leaving the world changed. The canyon walls stood sharp and bright against a sky turned deep blue, beautiful and dangerous. The cold had deepened with the clearing. Kelton warned her about snow blindness, about air so cold it could scar the lungs. As they prepared to leave the shelter, Ione noticed markings carved into the stone wall, some fresh, others worn smooth by time. Pictures, symbols, stories etched into rock. "Many people pass through here," Kelton said, running his fingers over the carvings. "Comanche, Apache, Mexicans, Americans, even Cherokee long ago." The stone held them all. "Everyone who passes leaves something behind," Kelton said. "Proof they lived through it. Water ran dry here one summer. Good hunting moved south." He pointed to a symbol etched deep into the rock. "That one is mine. From the winter my wife died. I came here alone to grieve." "What does it say?" Ione Calder asked. "Heavy, hard, but still beating." He brushed his fingers over another mark. "This one will be yours." "I don't know how," she said. He handed her his knife. "Simple, just truth." He guided her hand to a smooth stretch of stone. "What truth do you want to leave?" Ione paused. Then she carved carefully, a book with wings. Kelton studied it and nodded. "Knowledge flies out of sorrow," he said. "Good truth." They saddled the horses. Ione now wore the men's trousers Kelton had pulled from his pack. Better for hard riding, he'd said. She didn't argue. Survival had its own rules about what was proper. Just before they left, Kelton stilled, his head tilted. Listen. At first she heard only wind and the soft creak of leather, then voices, distant but sharp in the cold air, men cursing the snow, arguing over direction. How many? She whispered. 3, maybe 4. Behind us. He went still, calculating. They followed better than I thought, or had help. He mounted his paint horse in one fluid motion. We ride. Hard. Can you manage? I only thought of Cale Thorne, of dreams penciled into notebooks and erased by fever. Thought of her aunt in Santa Fe, likely believing her dead beneath the storm. Thought of men willing to hunt a widow through a blizzard for the coins sewn into her corset. I can manage. Kelton nodded, that near smile touching his mouth. Good. Then we give them a chase they won't forget. He leaned forward, speaking fast Comanche to his horse. Stay close. Trust your mare. A shout rang through the canyon. Someone had found their shelter, the still warm ashes of their fire. Ride, Kelton said. They burst from the canyon like spirits loosed from a bottle, snow exploding beneath pounding hooves. Shouts followed, but faded as distance grew. The chase was on. Cold burned Ione's lungs, but she found herself grinning, fierce, bright as winter sun, alive in a way she hadn't felt since long before Cale died. Whatever came next, she was done being prey. The wind has laws, Kelton had said. Maybe it was time she learned them all. By mid-morning, the sun turned the snow-covered plains into a blinding white sea. They'd ridden hard for 2 hours, leaving the canyon voices far behind. They paused on a low rise to rest the horses. That was when Ione noticed Kelton checking his saddlebags with unusual care. What is it? I need to see something. He drew out a small bundle wrapped in leather. He unwrapped it slowly. Inside, pressed between soft hide, lay a water-stained book, pages yellowed, edges warped. Pilgrim's Progress, her copy, the one she'd sold in Fort Worth. How? The word barely left her lips. I was at Patterson's store, he said, rewrapping the book with care. Trading pelts. I saw you, crying while you sold your books. The clerk was cheating you, offering half their worth. I only remembered that day all too well. The heat of humiliation. Standing at the counter as strangers stared, selling pieces of her life just to keep moving west. After you left, I bought this one, Kelton said, and 2 others, the Shakespeare and a book of maps. He tucked the leather-wrapped bundle back into his saddlebag. I couldn't buy them all, didn't have the money. But why? Ione Calder asked, then hesitated. I mean, can you even read? My mother taught us letters, he said evenly. Numbers, too. Enough not to be cheated by crooked contracts. He adjusted his horse's bridle, eyes still averted. But that's not why I bought them. Then why? Because they were yours, part of who you are. I saw what it cost you to let them go. He finally looked at her. My people know about losing things that matter. Land, sacred places, ways of living. When something is taken and can't be replaced, it leaves a hollow. He paused. Sometimes you can give a piece back. Tears burned behind Ione's eyes. You followed me from Fort Worth, she said. Not followed, he corrected. Watched. He pointed along their back trail. 3 days you traveled. Good pace. But that wagon wheel, I saw it was cracked when you bought it. Knew it would fail? Knew a storm was coming. So yes, I stayed close. He snorted softly. Like a guardian angel. He shook his head. Angels are your God's concern. I'm just a man who remembers kindness." He mounted again. "Come, we've still got ground to cover." They rode through land reshaped by the storm. Snowdrifts rose taller than a horse's head, forcing careful passage. Kelton led them along ridges where the wind had scoured the ground nearly bare, reading the country the way other men read paper maps. "There," he said, pointing to a dark blur on the horizon. "Smoke, not my people." The blur sharpened into a trading post, McHale's, according to the weather-beaten sign. A cluster of rough buildings crouched against the open prairie. Smoke rose from several chimneys. Too many horses crowded the corral for a place that size. "The men following us," Ione murmured. "Maybe," Kelton said, "or travelers waiting out the storm." His hand slid to check his rifle anyway. "We need supplies," he added. "Stay close. Say nothing unless someone asks you directly." Inside, the main building reeked of tobacco, wet wool, and the sharp mix of hides and spice that marked frontier posts. Several men looked up as they entered. Hard faces, the posture of hired muscle rather than honest drifters. At the bar, a thin man dressed too finely for the territory spoke in low tones with Bram Calder, a barrel-chested man with arms like oak trunks. Bram's face split into a grin when he saw Kelton. "Stone Shoulder, by God, I thought the storm might have taken you." Then he noticed Ione and frowned slightly. "Didn't know you were traveling with company." "Need supplies," Kelton said. "Grain for the horses, ammunition, coffee if you've got it." "Course I do. You know I keep the best—" Bram broke off as the thin man cleared his throat. "This the squaw man you mentioned?" the stranger asked. His accent carried the clipped sound of the East. "The one who trades here regular?" Bram's smile faded. "Mr. Virex Hale, this here's a respected customer. You'll speak civil, or not at all." Hale turned, studying Kelton and Ione with cool calculation. "Of course, my apologies." He smiled thinly. "We're looking for someone, a woman traveling alone from Fort Worth." His gaze settled on Ione. "A widow, about her age." "Plenty of widows these days," Kelton said calmly. "War's made many." "This one sold property recently," Hale continued. "Might be carrying a fair amount of money." His smile widened, but never touched his eyes. "Her late husband's brother is worried for her safety. Hired us to see she reaches her destination." Ione felt her jaw tighten. Cale Thorne had no brother in Dallas. That lie had been told to fend off vultures after the funeral. Whoever this man was, he had nothing to do with Cale. "As I said," Kelton replied evenly, "many widows on the frontier." Hale's smile sharpened. "This one," he said softly, "had books." "Sold a collection at Patterson's in Fort Worth," Virex Hale said coolly. The clerk remembered her well. "Books." Bram Calder grunted. "Well now, that does narrow things. And just what is your interest in this woman, Mr. Hale? Really?" Bram asked. "As I said, her family—" "I heard you," Bram cut in. His hand drifted casually toward the shotgun beneath the counter. "I asked what your interest was." The room fell silent. The other men shifted. Noted by posture alone, Ione counted 4 of Hale's men. 5 including Hale himself. The odds were poor. That was when she noticed Kelton's hands moving, small, almost idle motions, like brushing away flies. Outside, horses stirred. Hooves shuffled. His paint horse whinnied, and others answered. "My interest," Hale said at last, voice hard, "is in collecting lawful debts. This woman owes money to certain parties in Fort Worth. Considerable money. We have papers." "Show them," Bram said. Hale produced documents from inside his coat. Even from where she stood, Ione Calder could see they looked official. Seals, signatures, all neatly pressed, forged, without doubt, but convincing. Mrs. Evelyn Hart, Hale read aloud. Debts incurred through gambling and other moral failures, warrants sworn for her return to face justice. His eyes lifted to her. That is you, isn't it, Mrs. Hart? Before she could answer, Kelton stepped forward. This woman travels under the protection of the Pennateca band, he said. She is not Mrs. Hart. Hale's brows lifted. Oh? And who is she, then? She is Natohu, Kelton replied. It means keeper of stories, given into my protection by her family until she reaches her mother's people. Indian names don't make her Indian, one of Hale's men growled. No, Kelton agreed calmly, but this does. He reached into his pouch and drew out a leather band, beaded, inlaid with silver discs. Slowly, deliberately, he tied it around Ione's wrist. The beads were old, polished smooth by generations of hands. Band of my grandmother, he said loudly enough for all to hear. Marks her as under family protection, old law, from when the Spanish first came. A woman wearing this cannot be taken except by force, and force against her is force against all who share her fire. Bram leaned forward, studying the band. That's Speaker's work, he said. Ain't it? Your grandmother was Speaker's daughter. Yes. Bram straightened. Well then, that changes things considerably. He turned to Hale. Old law still carries weight here, Mr. Hale. You want to challenge it, you best bring more than paper. Hale's face flushed red. This is kidnapping, a white woman held against her will. Do I look held? Ione spoke at last. The band on her wrist felt warm, alive, as if it carried the heat of every hand that had worn it before. Do I look like I need rescuing from men who chased me through a blizzard? You're exhausted, Hale said smoothly. Not thinking clearly. The only confusion here is yours, Bram cut in. The woman says she's willing. She's wearing a proper band. That's enough for me. He brought the shotgun up, resting it on the bar. Now, boys, you looking to buy something? I'm open for business. Otherwise, it might be time to move along. The moment stretched tight as wire. Ione saw Hale calculating, measuring risk, weighing commitment. His men were ready. But Bram's reputation was well known, and there was something about Kelton's stillness that hinted at worse than gunfire. At last, Hale stepped back. Of course, he said lightly. We'll water our horses and be on our way. He tipped his hat toward Ione, the gesture mocking. Ma'am, or should I say, Natohu. His smile thinned. I hope you understand what you're choosing. Then they left, but Ione Calder could still feel them lingering, like smoke that refused to clear. Bram Calder waited until the door shut behind Virex Hale and his men before speaking. They'll be back, he said quietly. Men like that don't walk away when there's money in play. I know, Kelton replied, counting out coins for their supplies. We'll need a different route now. They know we're heading toward my band. You could wait them out here, Bram offered. Then he shook his head. Truth is, I'd rather not invite that kind of trouble. No offense, Kelton said. None taken. Kelton gathered their purchases with quick, efficient movements. The railroad camp, he asked. How far? 2 days north, but the country between here and there is rough. Good, Kelton said. Rough ground's harder to read. He glanced at Ione. Can you handle 2 days of hard riding? She touched the band on her wrist, thinking of all the women who might have worn it before her. I'm learning I can handle more than I thought. Outside, while they loaded supplies, she asked quietly, Is the old law real? Real enough, Kelton said. The Spanish recognized it. So did the Mexicans. And Americans? He shrugged. Depends on the man. Bram honors it. And that, she said softly, was what mattered in there. She touched the band again. Was it truly your grandmother's? Yes. She was Mexican, taken young, adopted into the band, married my grandfather, bore 6 children. He helped her into the saddle. She lived long enough to see Texas become American. And to watch the buffalo start to vanish. You're strong, he said. You'll need to be. As they rode out, Ione looked back. Hale and his men stood near the corral, watching. Even from a distance, the thin man tipped his hat again. She could see his smile. He won't stop, she said. No, Kelton replied. Men like that think the world owes them. They take what they want and call it justice. He urged his horse forward. But he's shown himself now. It's easier to face an enemy you can see. They rode north into broken country, leaving the trading post behind. Still, Ione knew Kelton was right. Hale would follow. The real reckoning lay ahead. The band on her wrist caught the afternoon sun, silver discs flashing like tiny suns. Whatever came next, she was no longer just a widow running from grief. She was becoming something else, something not yet fully shaped. The wind rose, sweeping away their tracks almost as soon as they made them. Good, she thought. Let Hale try to follow that. Behind them, Bram Calder's trading post crouched against the prairie, like a fortress built of logs and necessity. Inside, the air reeked of buffalo hides, tobacco, and the sour smell of men who had gone too long without washing. Ione tried not to stare at the goods hanging from every beam. Tools, pelts, bridles, and objects she couldn't name. 3 men sat near the pot-bellied stove. The same ones who had watched when they entered. Their leader, Hale, still stood at the counter, bargaining with Bram. His voice carried that polished Eastern tone that spoke of schooling and money neither honestly earned. We slip out through the root cellar, Kelton murmured, pretending to study a rack of knives. Bram will signal when it's time. The trader himself was a study in contradiction, big enough to break most men in half, yet with eyes that missed nothing and hands that counted money as gently as a banker's. When Bram glanced their way, something passed between him and Kelton. Fast as lightning. Miss? Hale's voice cut through the room. Ione kept her back turned, studying a shelf of canned goods as though it held the secrets of the universe. The beaded band on her wrist caught the lamplight. I don't believe the lady wishes to speak, Bram said mildly. And in my establishment, that settles it. Virax Hale's footsteps came closer anyway. I only wanted to offer an apology, he said smoothly. Our first meeting was unfortunate. Perhaps we might reach an understanding. We already have, Kelton replied, without turning. Enough of one? Hale's voice lowered, almost friendly. Do you understand that the railroad company I represent holds legal contracts to recover assets that were missed? That was when Ione Calder turned. My husband signed nothing with any railroad. No Cale Thorne of Weatherford ever did, she continued, her voice steady. He never borrowed money to expand that ranch, never pledged cattle he didn't own. Hale withdrew more papers from his coat. I have copies, if you'd like to refresh your memory. They looked convincing enough. Official seals, signatures. Cale's name sat at the bottom in careful script. Forged. Cleanly done. Clever. Even if those papers were real, Ione said, my husband is dead. His debts died with him. Texas law disagrees, Hale replied, smiling thinly. A wife inherits obligations along with assets. The smile reminded her of a snake she once found curled in the chicken coop. But I'm a reasonable man, Hale went on. Return the money you made selling the ranch, and we'll call it square. I took nothing that wasn't mine. The railroad sees it differently. That land was collateral. The sale money belongs to them, Bram Calder made a sound deep in his chest, like a bear waking angry. "I've heard plenty of tall tales, mister, but that one's riding high. Woman sells her land, money's hers." "Not when the land was pledged as surety." Hale's men rose from their seats, slow, casual, ready. "We're still willing to be reasonable," Hale said. "Half the amount would satisfy my employers." "And if I don't have it?" Ione asked. Hale's eyes slid over her, cold and appraising. "Then we explore alternatives. You're young, educated. The railroad employs women in many capacities." The implication made her skin crawl. Kelton's hand moved to his knife. "You leave. Now." Hale laughed. "What are you going to do, scalp me? We're in civilization." "Savage," he sneered. "You can't just—" The knife appeared in Kelton's hand so fast Ione barely saw it move. It buried itself in the wooden post inches from Hale's head. The blade still quivered. "Next one won't miss," Kelton said quietly. The room erupted. Hale's men lunged for their guns. Bram hauled up the shotgun from beneath the counter. Ione was shoved down behind the bar as the first shots exploded. The sound inside the room was thunderous, wood splintering, glass shattering. "Root cellar!" Bram roared, firing both barrels at once. "Go!" Kelton grabbed Ione's hand and dragged her through a trap door behind the counter. They tumbled down wooden steps into darkness that smelled of potatoes and brine. Gunfire raged above. Shouts, crashes, the roar of men fighting in close quarters. "This way," Kelton said, striking a match. The brief flame revealed a low tunnel braced with old timbers. "Bram dug this during the Indian Wars. Comes out near the stables." They crawled through dirt and darkness. Ione's skirt snagged on nails and splinters. The sounds of violence faded behind them, growing distant. At last, gray light showed ahead. A wooden grate opening onto snow. Kelton went first, checking the yard. Then he pulled her up into the cold afternoon air. They were behind the stables. Horses stamped and whinnied, agitated by the gunfire echoing from the main building. "Our mounts!" Ione gasped. "Already moved," Kelton said, leading her to where their horses waited, saddled, loaded, ready. "Bram and I," he added. "We've done this before." As they swung into the saddle, a man burst from the side door of the trading post, one of Hale's men, blood streaming from a head wound. He spotted them and raised his pistol. A shot cracked from above. The man spun and dropped into the snow. Ione looked up to see Bram Calder at an upper window, rifle smoking. "Ride!" Bram shouted. "I'll keep them busy." They spurred their horses into motion, hooves throwing snow as they vanished into the falling dusk, leaving gunfire, lies, and blood behind them. The trading post shrank behind them, looking no bigger than a child's toy. Chimneys smoking, the echo of scattered gunshots still rolling across the open land. "Bram Calder," Ione Calder said when they finally slowed their horses. "Will he be all right?" "He's lived through 3 wars and more brawls than I can count," Kelton replied. "Eastern Railroad thugs won't finish him." Still, his face stayed hard. "But Virex Hale will cause trouble for him now. That's the price of choosing a side." "He didn't have to help us." "No," Kelton said, "but Bram remembers when things worked different, when a man's word carried weight, when papers from back east didn't decide who lived or died." He nodded toward a thin line of scrub trees. "We camp there, cold camp. No fire." As they set up a small shelter, Ione kept touching the beaded band around her wrist. "Tell me about your grandmother," she said softly. "The one who wore this." "Elkai was her Christian name," Kelton said. "In our tongue, Tabinanikiv, morning light woman." He laid blankets on the ground, using their saddles to break the wind. "She was taken from a Mexican village at 12. Common then. Raids both ways. People, horses, goods. That must have been terrible. It was, he said. But my grandfather's first wife couldn't have children, wanted a daughter. She treated Elkai kindly, taught her our ways. He paused. When she was grown, she married my grandfather as his second wife. She used to say she lived 3 lives, he continued. Mexican child, Comanche woman, then American subject when Texas joined the Union. What did she learn from them? That survival isn't only staying alive, Kelton said. It's choosing what parts of yourself to keep, what to let go, what to change. He took out the wrapped books. Like you sold these to live, but kept what mattered. Ione accepted Pilgrim's Progress, her fingers tracing the worn binding. I used to read this to Cale Thorne at night. He'd fall asleep in his chair. I'd keep reading anyway, just to hear words in the quiet. Words matter, Kelton said. My grandmother kept Spanish prayers even after learning ours, said different gods listen to different languages. A coyote howled far off, answered by another. The horses shifted, uneasy, but Kelton calmed them with low words and steady hands. He won't stop, Ione said. Hail. No, Kelton agreed. Men like him see the world as a ledger, everything priced, everyone something to collect. He leaned back against his saddle. But today he showed himself. Lost men, made an enemy of Bram. Desperate men make worse mistakes. What if he's right? She asked. About the papers, the debts. Kelton shrugged. Paper is white man's magic. Still just marks on tree skin. My people signed many papers, treaties, promises. Most weren't worth the ink. They ate cold food in silence as stars filled the sky. Despite everything, Ione felt an unexpected calm. The violence at Bram's place should have shaken her. Instead, she felt awake, more alive than she had since Cale's death. I need to tell you something, she said, about the money. Kelton waited, patient as stone. Cale had a brother, she went on. Died in the war, left him gold, army pay, bounty money. Cale called it blood money, hid it, never touched it. She pressed her hand to her corset. After he died, I dug it up. Almost $300 in gold. Kelton's eyes sharpened. That's what Hale wants. Yes, somehow he knows. Gold makes men mad, Kelton said quietly. Always has. This brother, he was real, he added. Yes, Ione said. Eamon Thorne, killed at Antietam. She took out a small daguerreotype and held it where the moonlight could reach it. 2 young men stared back from the photograph, faces too serious for their age, dressed in Union blue. That's them, Kelton said quietly. Cale Thorne never forgave himself for staying behind. He kept the ranch running while Eamon Thorne went to war. He carried that like a sin, Ione Calder said. Every man carries a different weight, Kelton replied. Your husband grew food, kept fires burning. That matters too. I told him that, she said, but he called it cowardice. And you? Kelton asked. What do you see now? Ione studied the image. I see 2 boys forced to become men too soon, in a world that demanded more than it should. Like most of us, he said. A sound cut through the night. Both of them froze. Horses, moving slow, careful, not close yet, but heading their way. Kelton raised a finger to his lips. Without a word, he began gathering their things, movements quiet and practiced. They slipped away like ghosts, leading the horses on foot until they were clear, then mounting only when distance swallowed the noise. Behind them, voices drifted through the dark, Virex Hale's men, calling to one another. They track better than I thought, Kelton said as they rode. Or they've got help, Ione said. Indian trackers, he nodded, or buffalo soldiers. Railroad money buys many consciences. They rode through the night, stopping only long enough to spare the horses. By dawn, they had covered 20 miles. Still, when Ione looked back, she saw dust rising on the horizon. "They're still coming," she said hoarsely. Kelton studied the trail, his face tight. "I don't know how, but we can't keep running straight." He turned his horse north, toward Broken Hills. "Time to use the land against them. My grandmother used to say, when the hunter becomes hunted, become the wind. What does that mean?" "It means we stop being predictable," he said, a fierce smile flashing. "Here, then gone, then back again." He leaned forward in the saddle. "They want to chase the keeper of stories. Let's give them one worth remembering." As they rode toward the hills, Ione felt something shift inside her. She was done being prey. Whatever came next, she would meet it standing, not fleeing. The beaded band on her wrist caught the morning light, and she imagined the women who had worn it before her, strength whispering into her bones. Lamplight flickered across tense faces in Bram Calder's back room. Bram sat behind his desk, a bloody cloth pressed to a gash on his forehead. Two regulars, buffalo hunters by the smell of them, stood guard at the door. "Railroad men are getting bold," Bram said, pouring whiskey one-handed. "Used to be they hired Pinkertons, pretended at law. Now they send thugs with pretty papers." Kelton accepted the drink, but didn't touch it. "How many?" he asked. "Hale lost 2 in the fight," Bram said. "Still has 4, maybe 5. Plus whatever trackers he can buy." He winced, adjusting the rag. "They left an hour ago, headed north after you." "We doubled back south," Ione said. "Lost them near Butler Creek." "Smart," Bram said, "but they'll catch on." He opened a drawer and unrolled a map. "Look here. Railroad's planning a spur through Comanche land, surveying quiet, bribing who they can, threatening the rest." Kelton studied the markings. "This cross, Medicine Rocks, sacred ground. Shortest line to their new cattle depot," Bram said. "Of course they'd pick it." He leaned back. "Your lady here is just one small obstacle. You made it bigger by claiming protection. Those old laws don't mean much to men like Hale, just something to get around." "Hale was wiring Fort Worth before you arrived," Bram continued, "asking about jurisdiction. He's not just muscle, he knows the law." Ione felt the weight of that. A gunman was one thing. A gunman with law books was another. "There's more," Bram said. "That beaded band, you gave her. Hale recognized it. He studied tribal customs." "Looking for cracks," Kelton said flatly. "Exactly," Bram replied. "Challenges. Taboo claims. Anything to say the protection isn't real." He met Ione's eyes. "He'll try to prove it's all an act, that you're not truly under the band's authority." The room fell quiet, the threat settling like dust after a gunshot. "How would he do it?" Ione Calder asked. "The old way was simple," Bram Calder said. "Challenge the protector, man to man. The new way, lawyers and federal marshals." He poured another drink. "Either way, you need to reach your people fast. Harder to break protection when the whole band stands behind it." A sharp knock tightened every spine in the room. One of the buffalo hunters cracked the door, peered out, then eased. "It's Rusk Fallon." Rusk stepped in, snow melting off his coat. "Riders coming. 8, maybe 10. About an hour out. Moving careful." "Virex Hale found help," Kelton said. "Or friends," Bram corrected. "I sent Rusk to Fort Clark yesterday. Cavalry owes me favors." Rusk shook his head. "Ain't cavalry. No uniforms. Mix of men. Some white. Couple look like half-breeds or Delaware scouts. Hired trackers." Kelton stood. "Then we move." "Wait." Bram hauled himself upright and pushed on a wall panel. It swung open to reveal weapons. Old and well-kept. "Hale wants old laws?" Bram said. "Let's answer with old laws." He lifted an ancient lance, feathers and dark tokens bound along the shaft. Belonged to Ulrich, Comanche chief. He gave it to me after the Treaty of 67. A man who carries this can speak for any warrior in council, can call for judgment by combat instead of paper law. Kelton took the lance with care. This is a great trust. Loan, Bram said. You bring it back. He turned to Ione. Now you. We make your protection plain. From a trunk he drew clothing, beaded shirt, leggings, moccasins, women's work. Beautiful, deliberate. They were my wife's, he said quietly. Cheyenne. Smallpox took her in 68. Ione hesitated. I can't. You can and will, Bram cut in. Naira Calder would approve. She never had patience for men who thought papers mattered more than people. Besides, clothes are meant to be worn. While Ione changed behind a blanket, the men spoke in low voices. Routes, supplies, fallbacks. It sounded like Cale Thorne's war stories. Calm words wrapped around danger. When Ione stepped out, the room fell silent. The fit was exact, the work flawless. Bram nodded. Now you look like what you are. Let Hale argue with his eyes. Rusk watched the window. Dust South Road now, too. We're getting wrapped. 3 sides. They leave the east, Kelton said. Broken lands. Rough, Bram agreed. But you know it better. Unless they've got Tonka scouts. Then we make our own trail. Bram thrust a heavy leather pouch into Kelton's hand. There's a miner up there, Ike Rowan. Half mad, knows every track for 50 miles. Tell him I'm calling the marker. He'll get you through. More sounds outside. Horses shouted positions. Hale's net tightening. Back tunnel? Kelton asked. Clear. Take the dun mare. Mountain bred. Sure-footed. Leave your tired mounts. I'll see to them. They packed fast. Ione wrapped her books and small things, catching her reflection. Someone between worlds, and knowing it true. Ready? Kelton asked. She nodded, then hugged Bram. He stiffened, then patted her back. Steel under silk, he said. Like Naira. She'd have liked you. They slipped into the tunnel, the lance awkward in the tight space. Behind them, Bram's voice boomed, easy and loud. Come on in, boys. Drinks are on the house. The tunnel felt longer than before, or maybe it was the pressure of being hunted that made the night feel heavier. When they reached the stables, darkness had fully settled, clouds swallowing the stars. Good cover for slipping away. Just as good for a trap. The dun mare stood exactly where Bram Calder had promised, already saddled. They shifted their packs quickly, Kelton murmuring low to soothe the animals. As they eased out the rear path, a shout tore through the air behind them. They're inside, Kelton said under his breath. Bram will stall them. Gunfire cracked almost at once. Windows flared with muzzle flashes like deadly fireflies, answered by shots from around the post. Bram's people, covering their escape. They mounted and rode, not reckless, not slow, letting the horses feel their way through the black. The sounds of fighting thinned, then vanished, replaced by the immense silence of the winter prairie. After an hour, Kelton called a halt to rest the horses. Look back. Ione Calder turned. Far off, an orange glow flickered against the clouds. Fire, Kelton said. Bram's signal. He bought us time, but they'll follow. He scanned the sky, reading what she couldn't. Another storm building. Might help us. Might not. That depends on finding Ike Rowan first. They pushed on into broken country, where old water had carved the land into twisting arroyos and ridges. The decorated shirt felt strange on Ione's skin. Someone else's past, but also steadying, as if it carried its own shield. Tell me about Ulrich, she said, kneading sound against the dark. Great chief, Kelton replied. Talked peace when he could, fought when he had to, told hard truths to white men and Comanche alike. He adjusted the ancient lance across his saddle. He died trying to stand between two worlds pulling apart, like my grandmother. Like many, Ione said softly. Yes, living between worlds means fully belonging to none, but bridges get built there. A coyote cried. Too close. Then another, from a different direction. Kelton reined in sharply. Not coyotes. Men rose from the ground as if born of shadow, some in pieces of uniform, others dressed like renegades. The attack hit from 3 sides at once. Ione's mare shied as hands clawed for the bridle. Kelton moved in a blur, the old lance spinning. One man went down clutching his shoulder. Another fell as Kelton's horse struck out with trained hooves. Still, there were too many. "The woman!" someone shouted. "Hale wants her alive!" Hands dragged Ione from the saddle. She fought, using what Kelton had taught her, but these men knew how to take prisoners. As she fell, she glimpsed Kelton ringed by enemies, still standing, still striking. Then thunder split the night. Not sky thunder. Hooves. Riders poured down from the ridges, war cries tearing the dark. These men moved like wind itself, their voices pure Comanche. The attackers broke, suddenly prey instead of hunters. Ione rolled clear of trampling horses and scrambled against a rock wall. Through the chaos, she saw Kelton fighting alongside the newcomers, Ulrich's lance marking him unmistakably. When it ended, 7 attackers lay dead or dying. The rest fled into the night. The riders circled back. They were young warriors, faces painted for battle. One dismounted, tall, scarred, eyes sharp with knowing. He clasped Kelton in a warrior's embrace. "Little cousin," he said in accented English, "Bram's fire called us, said you might need help." Kelton turned to Ione, steadying her. "This is Ashkai, White Eagle, my cousin, war chief of our band." Ashkai studied her closely. The Cheyenne clothing, the beaded band, her pale, resolute face. "You are the one claiming protection." "I am. And these dogs challenged it," Ashkai said, spitting toward the bodies. "Railroad men, we know them. They poison water, drive off game, bring soldiers when we object." "Their leader still lives," Kelton said. "Virex Hale. He'll come again, with papers and laws." "Let him," Ashkai said, smiling like a blade in winter. "We move to winter camp tomorrow. You ride with us." He gestured to the gathered warriors. "Let this Hale find you ringed by the people. We'll see how his papers stand then." As they gathered weapons and horses, Ione noticed how the warriors watched her, curious but respectful. The clothes, the band, Kelton's clear claim spoke louder than any explanation. "Thank you," she said to Ashkai. "Thank Bram Calder," he replied. "And thank the old laws Hale thinks he can bend. They cut both ways." His gaze softened. "You wear Naira Calder's clothes. I knew her. Strong heart. Honor them." "I will try." Ashkai shook his head. "No, you will." His voice was steady, not harsh. "Do it or don't. Living between worlds is hard enough without hesitating." As they prepared to ride for the winter camp, Ione Calder understood what he meant. The protection she had claimed carried weight. The clothes she wore carried responsibility. She was stepping onto a bridge that could not be crossed the same way twice, looking at the men who had hunted her for coin. At Kelton, inspecting the ground where blood had soaked into ancient earth. At warriors who had ridden through darkness to aid someone they did not know. The choice felt clearer than any she had faced since Cale Thorne died. She was finished with being prey. Snow crunched under boots and hooves in Bram Calder's yard at dawn. The pale sun cast long shadows over the gathered crowd. Virex Hale and 3 of his remaining men on one side, Kelton and several Comanche warriors on the other. Bram stood between them, shotgun held easy, but ready. Terms are simple, Bram said, breath steaming. Hale claims the woman owes debts. Kelton claims she's under his band's protection. Old law says that gets settled by counsel, or by challenge. Hale stepped forward, his tailored coat glaringly out of place. I prefer a civilized solution. I have legal documents. You showed those yesterday, Bram cut in. Nobody here was impressed, so we do this the frontier way. Ione stood with the women and children who had come from the winter camp to witness. She wore Naira Calder's dress openly now, having learned its history through the night from Ashkai's wife. Every bead had meaning. Every pattern told a story. I invoke the right of challenge, Hale said. If the woman is truly under protection, let her defender prove it. Kelton stepped forward. Ashkai stopped him with a hand. The railroad man knows you're wounded from last night. He's counting on it. It was true. A deep gash crossed Kelton's left arm, stitched by the medicine woman but still weak. I'll stand champion, Ashkai offered. No, Kelton said, straightening. My protection, my fight. Hale smiled thinly. Actually, I won't fight personally. As challenger, I name a champion. He gestured. Morven Pike will represent me. Morven Pike stepped into the open, a massive man, scarred knuckles, flattened nose, shoulders like a barn door. He grinned, gaps showing where teeth were missing. Knives? Morven asked. Hands only, Bram said sharply. This is law, not murder. Fight until one yields or can't continue. Fine by me, Morven said, cracking his knuckles. Been too long since a real scrap. Kelton handed Ulrich's lance to Ashkai, then stripped off his shirt despite the cold. A low chant rose from the warriors, vibrating through the air and raising the hair on Ione's neck. She wanted to shout that his wound wasn't healed, that Morven outweighed him, but the circle had already formed. Scared for your champion? Hale murmured beside her. You should be. Pike fought professionally in Chicago. 27 wins. No losses. Kelton isn't a sport, Ione said without looking at him. He's a warrior. We'll see. Bram marked the ground. No eye gouging, no biting, no strikes to the groin. Anything else stands. The men began to circle, reading each other. Morven struck first, a brutal swing that would have crushed most men. But Kelton wasn't there. He flowed aside like water. Morven stumbled, recovered fast, and came back with sharp, testing jabs meant to probe distance and timing. Kelton stayed moving, guarding, forcing Morven to work for every step. The injury showed. His left arm stayed low, couldn't rise fully. Morven noticed. His attacks shifted, hammering that weakness again and again. From the crowd, someone muttered, $5 on the railroad, man. Ione clenched her hands, eyes never leaving the circle as the snow beneath their feet began to churn red. Someone in the crowd shouted, I'll take that bet. Bram Calder's voice answered at once. Never wager against a Comanche on his own ground. Still, as the minutes dragged on, it looked like the safer money sat with Morven Pike. He'd driven Kelton back toward the ring of onlookers, working him with heavy blows to the body, steady and relentless. Blood seeped through the bandage on Kelton's arm. Yield, Morven growled. No shame in it. Kelton answered with a sudden knee to the ribs that knocked the breath clean out of Morven. As the big man folded, Kelton dropped an elbow hard across the back of his neck. Morven slammed face first into the snow, but he was tough. He rolled away before Kelton could press the advantage, surged back in, and wrapped him up. Strength told then. Morven hoisted Kelton and drove him down hard. The crowd hissed at the impact. Get up, Ashkai shouted in Comanche. Remember your grandmother. Kelton rolled aside as a boot smashed down where his head had been. He got up slowly, unsteady. His left arm hung nearly useless now, the bandage soaked dark red. Quit, Morven said, stalking forward. You're finished. That was when Ione Calder saw it. The slight change in Kelton's stance. The way his eyes sharpened. He had been letting Morven believe the fight was his. The trap snapped shut. As Morven lunged, Kelton pivoted, borrowing the big man's momentum. His right hand shot out, fingers finding Morven's throat, thumb pressing into a precise point. Morven's eyes flared wide, then went empty. He dropped like a felled tree. Silence fell. Bram stepped in, checked him quickly. Out cold, breathing. Fight's done. The Comanche warriors broke into shouts of victory. Ione ran to Kelton as he swayed. Your arm. It will heal, he said, managing a thin smile. My grandmother taught me that place. Big men fall hardest when you find the right weakness. Virex Hale had gone pale. This proves nothing. I still have legal documents. They mean nothing here, Ashkai said, lifting Ulrich's lance high. The challenge was made. The challenge was met. The woman stands proven under our protection. Your papers are only wind. The federal marshal will hear of this, Hale snapped. Fort Worth, too. The railroad has influence. And I have this, Bram said, producing a telegram. Arrived this morning. Seems folks in Austin are looking into forged deeds and crooked land deals. Your name came up, Mr. Hale, along with questions about men who disappeared after opposing railroad expansion. Hale snatched the paper, read it, crushed it in his fist. This isn't finished. Yes, it is, Bram said, final as a closing gate. You have 1 hour to leave. After that. He nodded toward the gathered warriors. These people may remember those poisoned waterholes you mentioned. As Hale's men hauled Morven Pike away, groaning, Ashkai stepped closer. A federal agent rides from Austin, he said. Bram sent word. Will it help? Maybe, Ione said. Maybe not. It puts them on the back foot, Ashkai replied. He looked at Kelton, now being tended by the medicine woman. You fought well, cousin, foolishly. You should have let me stand in. My protection. My fight, Kelton said again. Ashkai smiled despite himself. Stubborn as your grandmother. Come, we return to camp. The people want to meet the woman who stirred all this trouble. As they turned to go, Hale made one last attempt. Mrs. Calder, he called. You don't have to do this. You're educated, civilized. You belong with your own kind. Ione stopped. She looked at Bram, who had risked his livelihood for strangers. At the warriors who had ridden through night and storm. At Kelton, bleeding but unbroken. Then she looked back at Hale. My own kind, she said quietly, is standing right here. Who had seen her only as money to be taken. I think I've found my people, Mr. Hale, Ione Calder said calmly. They just don't look the way you expected. Virex Hale's mouth tightened. You'll regret this. When the railroad comes through, there won't be room for Indian lovers. You'll be the one regretting it, Morven Pike muttered, finally steady on his feet. He caught Hale's arm. Boss, we need to leave. Now. Before turning away, Morven gave Kelton a nod. Good fight. That throat trick. Never saw it coming. Secret of fighting, Kelton replied evenly. Show the enemy what he expects. Hide what matters. As Hale's group rode off, their silhouettes shrinking against the snow, Ione felt a weight lift from her chest. It wasn't over. Men like Hale never quit easily. But something had changed. She was no longer alone, no longer running. So, Ashkai said, breaking the quiet. You ride with us to winter camp. Learn our ways. Spring will bring new trials. But for now, he gestured at the untouched snow, the wide, clean sky. For now, you are among the people. I don't know your ways, Ione said honestly. I'll make mistakes. Everyone does, Ashkai replied. What matters is learning from them. His tone hardened. But understand this. Protection isn't only safety, it is belonging. You share our fires. You share our fate. Ione thought of Cale Thorne, of the life they had planned, taken by fever, of Santa Fe, and the quiet certainty she had once believed in. Then she looked at Kelton, who had bled for her without asking a thing in return. "I understand," she said. "Do you?" Ashkai pressed. "When soldiers come, you stand with us. When hunger comes, you eat last with the women. When we move, you leave behind what won't fit on a horse. This isn't a story from your books. This is life between worlds." "My world ended when my husband died," Ione said softly. "I've been between ever since. At least now," Ashkai said after a long look. "You are not between alone." He nodded once. "Come then, keeper of stories. Let's see what tales you write in winter snow." As they rode out, Bram Calder called after them, "If you need anything, send word. And Kelton, bring that lance back when you can. I think it's got a few fights left in it." The trading post fell behind as they headed toward winter camp. Ione rode between Kelton and Ashkai, wrapped in Cheyenne dress and Comanche protection, carrying the books of one world into another. Behind them, Hale's dust had already settled. Ahead, thin smoke rose from cook fires where the people waited. Between those points stretched the vast prairie, indifferent to human struggle, yet somehow smaller when traveled with those who knew its ways. "Tell me about winter camp," Ione said. "Work," Ashkai answered. "Tanning hides, making tools, teaching children." "You'll help the women," Kelton added. "Learn our tongue. Maybe teach letters in return. Hard life, but good." "Life with purpose," Ashkai said, "with people who choose loyalty over law." As they rode toward the smoke, toward whatever waited among the winter lodges, Ione thought about bridges, those places where worlds touched. Maybe that was what she had become. Not fully of either world, but something new, something necessary. The sun climbed higher, softening the bitter air. Somewhere behind them, Hale was nursing his anger and plotting revenge. Somewhere ahead, federal men were riding with questions and papers. But for this moment, right now, she was riding with her people. She rode beside warriors who had claimed her as one of their own, moving toward a future she could not foresee, but no longer feared. The beaded band at her wrist caught the pale winter light, and she remembered Kelton's grandmother, a Mexican child, a Comanche woman, an American subject. 3 lives carried in one body. Maybe that was the truth of it. Not choosing one world over another, but finding the courage to live between them. When the winter camp came into view, lodges arranged in careful circles with smoke rising straight into the still air, Ione Calder understood she wasn't merely crossing a bridge anymore. She was becoming one. The winter camp lay tucked into a sheltered valley where cottonwoods broke the worst of the wind. Dozens of teepees stood in precise order, each band holding its traditional place. Children ran laughing between lodges, dogs barking, women's voices keeping time with the steady scrape of hide against bone. Ione had been there 3 weeks now. Her hands were roughened, her shoulders sore, her body learning the cost of survival. That morning she knelt beside Tovin, Kelton's sister, scraping a deer hide clean. The work demanded balance. Too much pressure tore the skin, too little left flesh to spoil. "Better," Tovin said, watching her hands. "You learn fast, for a white woman." The words carried no insult now. The first week had been harder. Suspicious looks, children who scattered when she approached, women who went quiet when she joined their circles. But shared labor and small kindnesses had softened those edges. "Your brother is a good teacher," Ione said in careful Comanche. She had been studying the language each evening with Kelton and whichever children volunteered to correct her. Tovan smiled. "He speaks of you often, says you have the patience of a hunter." Before Ione could answer, movement stirred at the edge of camp. Riders approached, not from their band. Ione recognized the lead rider's headdress at once. Redhorn, leader of the band. Kelton's uncle. "Cover your work," Tovin said quietly. "When Redhorn returns from council, everyone gathers." By the time the central fire was built high, the people had assembled. Ione stood among the women of Kelton's family, not fully one of them, not merely a guest either. Kelton stood across the fire with the warriors, Ulrich's lance marking his standing. Redhorn dismounted slowly. Even in his 60s, he carried authority like weight in his bones, his eyes holding the memory of plains and storms. When he spoke, his voice reached every corner of the circle. "I have returned from the agency," he said in Comanche. "The news is not good." He spoke of meetings with federal men, of new treaties offered with sweet words and bitter intent, of railroads pressing harder, backed by politicians who saw native land as empty ground waiting to be claimed. "They offer smaller reservations," Redhorn continued. "They say we may keep our ways if we step aside for their iron horse." He shook his head. "I have seen what happens to people penned like cattle. It is a slow death." An elder woman rose, medicine keeper, keeper of memory. She spoke of old treaties that promised this land to their children's children. "Paper promises," Redhorn said grimly, "worth less than morning mist." The council that followed was heated but orderly. Warriors called for resistance. Mothers worried over feeding children through another winter. Elders recalled broken words and lost ground. Ione understood only parts of the language, but she felt every word. Then Redhorn's gaze settled on her. "We have a guest who has sought our protection," he said. "Perhaps she has words, from her world to ours." Ione's throat tightened, to stand in council, to speak before the entire band. Tovin nudged her gently, and suddenly Ione was on her feet, dozens of eyes upon her. "I am grateful for your protection," she began, her Comanche slow but steady. She shifted fully into English, when the ideas grew too tangled for careful Comanche. "In my world," Ione Calder said, "I've seen what the railroad brings. It brought death to my husband, not by steel or gunfire, but through the sickness that follows camps and crowds." She thought of Cale Thorne, of his hopes for cattle and a steady future. "The iron horse consumes the land. Wherever it runs, old ways die. Not only yours, farmers' ways too. Small ranches swallowed by companies too large to see people. Families forced out by men carrying papers in one hand and guns in the other." A voice rose from the crowd. "You speak against your own people." "I speak the truth," Ione answered. "The men like Virex Hale. They don't see people. They see resources, land to claim, problems to erase, obstacles to remove. To them, anyone standing in the way becomes an obstacle. All of us." Redhorn studied her closely. "You say we," he said. "You count yourself among us." The question hung in the cold air. Ione felt the weight of it, the final step across a bridge she had been crossing since the night of the blizzard. "Yes," she said quietly. "I've seen both worlds now. I choose the one where people matter more than paper." A murmur moved through the circle, some approval, some doubt. Redhorn nodded slowly. "Then you will share our fate," he said. "Whatever comes." "It is acceptable," Ione replied. "Then we have matters to settle." He gestured for her to sit, not with the guests, but with the family. "The agent in Austin, the one Bram Calder contacted, will come in the spring to investigate the railroad's crimes. He will seek testimony." "I will testify," Ione said at once, "if it helps." "It may. Or it may not," Redhorn answered. "But there is danger. Virex Hale is not finished with you. Our scouts say he still searches, now with federal marshals behind him. He claims you stole money belonging to the railroad." "That's a lie." Truth and lies matter less than whose voice the judge hears, Redhorn said, weariness showing. We will face that when it comes. For now, winter shields us. Few men are foolish enough to chase into Comanche camps during the cold months. The council continued past sunset. Plans for hunting parties, preparations should soldiers come, talk of which bands might stand together if fighting returned. Ione found herself among the women, counting supplies, organizing preserved food, planning for sudden movement if needed. Later, when the camp quieted, she found Kelton by the horse corral, checking a mare heavy with foal. "You spoke well in council," he said without looking up. "I was terrified." "Good," he said. "Fearless words are often foolish ones." He rested a hand along the mare's belly. 3 weeks, maybe 4. New life, even in winter. They stood in easy silence, watching stars pierce the darkening sky. The cold sharpened, but Ione had learned. Layers of wool and hide, fur-lined moccasins, always a blanket close. "My sister says you speak of me," she said at last. "My sister speaks too much," he replied, then smiled. "But yes, I speak of you, the woman who trades books for bullets, who learns without complaint, who stands in council and claims us as her people." "Is that so strange?" "From where I stand, yes." He turned fully toward her. "Most whites who come to us are running, from crimes, from shame, from having nowhere else. You could go anywhere. You have money hidden, education, skill, yet you stay." "Where would I go?" she asked. "My aunt in Santa Fe believes I'm dead. I have no family left, no home waiting." "That is reason to leave," he said. "Not reason to stay." She chose her words carefully. "The night you found me in the storm, I was ready to die, not seeking it, but not fighting it either. Everything I built with Kale was gone. I was only moving because habit told me to." She met his eyes. "Now I wake with purpose, small ones, helping Tovin with hides, teaching children letters, learning which trails survive winter. But they are enough." She fell silent, and the night held her words as the stars burned cold and steady overhead. Purpose, all the same. Ione Calder drew her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Your world doesn't erase my grief," she said quietly, "but it doesn't let me sink into it either." She paused, then added, "My grandmother used to say grief is like winter. Necessary, but never meant to last. Those who try to skip it find it follows them. Those who accept it live long enough to see spring." A wolf howled somewhere beyond the cottonwoods. Others answered. The sound no longer chilled her blood. It felt like another voice woven into the long conversation of the plains. "Tovan also says you never took another wife after Hutsu died," Ione said carefully. Kelton's hand stilled against the mare's flank. "My sister talks too much," he said at last. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "No." He resumed his careful inspection. "It's a fair question. You shared your grief. I can share mine." He was silent for a moment, breath fogging the air. "Hutsu was my heart's choosing. When she died, I believed that part of me died too. It felt safer to live half alive than to risk that kind of pain again." He looked at Ione then, something shifting in his eyes. "And now I think my grandmother spoke true. Winter is needed, but it does not stay forever." Before either could speak again, a shout cut through the camp. "Riders. Fast." Kelton seized his rifle and pushed Ione toward cover, but the lead rider shouted in Comanche. One of their own scouts, his horse blown and steaming in the cold. "Soldiers," the scout gasped. 2 days behind, company strength, Tonkawa scouts with them." Redhorn emerged from his lodge, already reaching for his war shirt. "How many?" 40, maybe 50. They're heading for the agency first, but the Tonkawa know our winter grounds. Virex hail, Ione breathed. Maybe, Kelton said grimly. Or maybe just the army doing what armies always do. Redhorn's voice cut clean through the gathering crowd. Either way, we move. The camp erupted into disciplined motion. Lodges came down. Goods were lashed to travois. Weapons checked. The very young and the very old were sent forward first with most of the women. Warriors spread out to screen the retreat. You go with the first group, Kelton told Ione. I can shoot, she said. Kale taught me. This isn't about shooting, he replied. It's about survival. The first group has the best chance. You go. But when the first party slipped away before dawn, Ione was not among them. She had hidden in the confusion and emerged only after they were gone. Tovin found her packing medical supplies. Stubborn as my grandmother, Tovin said, echoing her brother. Why stay? Because I claimed you as my people, Ione answered. I can't do that only when it's easy. Tovin studied her, then nodded once. Then you ride with the medicine women. We follow the warriors. You tend wounds. You sing strength. Can you do this? I can try. No, Tovan said firmly, the way Ashkai spoke in council. Do or do not. Lives depend on it. Ione met her gaze. I will. As the sun rose, painting the snow a thin, bloody pink, the camp was nearly empty. Only the warriors remained, along with a handful of women who refused to leave their men. Ione checked the rifle Kelton had given her, then tucked her books deep into the saddlebags. Whatever came next, she would meet it as one of the people. The bridge was crossed. The choice made. Far off, a plume of dust marked the soldiers' advance. Time to learn whether paper law or prairie law would rule the day. The Canadian River ran thick with ice, its dark current murmuring beneath frozen sheets that groaned and cracked with every step. The main group had crossed at dawn. The warriors held the south bank now, eyes fixed on the horizon where dust and smoke climbed into the cold air. They're moving faster than expected, Ashkai said, lowering his field glasses. The Tonkawa scouts know every bend of the shoreline, Redhorn said, sitting his horse as still as stone shaped by the prairie. Then we give them something else to chase. He turned slightly. Kelton, take 5 men. Build smoke on Eagle Ridge. Make them believe we're settling there. Pull them east while we cross west. Ione Calder watched from where she waited beside Tovin and 3 other women who had refused to leave. Their pack horses were heavy with medicine, ammunition, and the most precious cargo of all, the sacred bundles and the winter count hides that held the people's memory. You could still go, Tovin said softly. Catch the main group before they reach the canyon. Could you? Ione answered. Leave your brother and your uncle to face soldiers alone? That's different. They're my blood. Blood isn't the only thing that makes a family. Ione checked her rifle again, a habit she hadn't been able to break. Your people took me in when my own kind hunted me. That forges its own bonds. A sharp cry rose from the scouts. The soldiers had split their force. One detachment followed Kelton's false trail toward the smoke. Another cut straight for the river crossing. Smart, someone muttered. They've got a man who knows frontier ground. Time to move, Redhorn commanded. Warriors hold the crossing until the women are across. Then we fall back in stages. No heroes today. Live now, fight later. The crossing was a nightmare. Ice that looked solid shattered without warning, plunging horses belly deep into freezing water. Ione's mare stumbled twice, saved only by Tovan's quick grip on the bridle. Behind them, the first rifle shots cracked across the open land. They reached the north bank just as the soldiers came into range. Ione twisted in the saddle and saw the warriors retreating in disciplined rhythm, firing, falling back, using broken ice and steep banks to slow pursuit. It was precise, almost graceful, but the Tonkawa scouts knew the river too. They found a firm crossing upstream and swung in from the flank. Ione saw Redhorn go down, his horse shot out from under him. Warriors rushed to shield him, but the ring of fire tightened. "Go!" Tovin shouted, striking Ione's horse. "Ride for the canyon." Instead, Ione hauled hard on the reins and turned back. Training had made her competent. Fear made her fearless. She charged toward the river, rifle up. Her first shot knocked a Tonkawa scout clean from his saddle. The second went wide, but it drew fire. Soldiers swung their rifles toward her, and that heartbeat of distraction was enough. Redhorn seized a loose horse, vaulted up, and thundered away. "Crazy woman!" he shouted as he passed her. "Ride!" They ran north together, bullets whining past like angry hornets. Ione's horse screamed as a round grazed its flank, but it didn't slow. She clung low, Cale Thorne's lessons ringing in her head. Heels down, weight centered. Become part of the horse. The canyon opened ahead like a door cut into the earth. Ancient water had carved the stone into towers, arches, and narrow throats where two riders could barely pass abreast. The main group was already through. Defensive positions waited. As they entered, warriors appeared from behind rock and shadow, laying down covering fire. The soldiers reined up at the mouth, unwilling to rush such an obvious trap. An officer's voice carried as he barked orders, forcing a slower, cautious advance. "That buys us time," Redhorn said, blood streaking from a cut at his temple. He looked at Ione. "Well done, keeper of stories." "Next time," he added dryly, "follow orders." "If I had," Ione said, "you'd be dead." "Perhaps," he allowed, "or perhaps the spirits would have stepped in. We'll never know." Despite the words, approval lived in his eyes. "Can you read papers as well as you shoot?" "Yes." "Why?" He drew a leather portfolio from his saddlebag. "Taken from a captured scout. These may explain why they're pushing so hard in winter. Tovin, bind my wound while she reads." Ione's hands trembled as she opened the case. Official Army letterhead. Orders. Maps. The cold in her stomach spread fast. "It isn't just about us," she said quietly. "They're clearing every band from this region. The railroad needs this corridor by spring to lay a new line. They're offering bounties for hostile Indians removed." "How much?" Ashkai asked. $20 per warrior, Ione Calder read, her voice steady. $5 for every woman and child. $50 for chiefs. She looked up at Redhorn. "You're worth $50 dead," she added softly. Redhorn gave a dry snort. "I'm honored. What else?" he asked. Ione turned another page. Virex Hale is listed here, as a civilian contractor providing intelligence. There's a note about recovering stolen railroad assets from a renegade white woman. "So we all have prices now," Kelton said quietly, appearing at her side as if he'd stepped out of the stone itself. His feint had worked. Half the soldiers were still chasing smoke along the eastern ridge. "There's more," Ione went on. She unfolded a map marked with heavy red lines. Proposed railroad routes. They cut straight through sacred sites, medicine rocks, burial grounds, everything. Silence closed around them. Those places weren't symbols alone. They were the spine of Comanche life, where boys became warriors, where the dead were spoken to, where the living learned who they were. "Then we fight," a young warrior burst out, anger bright in his eyes. "With what?" Redhorn asked calmly. 40 soldiers today. How many tomorrow? How many when the snow melts?" He looked suddenly older, the weight of the people heavy on his shoulders. "We could die brave, or we could live smart." "And how do you propose that?" Ashkai demanded. "The paper way," Redhorn said, turning his gaze to Ione. "You said an agent from Austin is coming. These documents, bounties on human lives, plans to violate treaty land, White law calls these crimes, does it not? Yes, Ione said, then hesitated. But then we use their own weapons against them, Redhorn said, straightening. Decisions made. We do not fight the soldiers. We evade. We survive. And if they catch us? Kelton asked. Then we fight, Redhorn replied evenly. But not today. Today we run. And running is not cowardice when it serves something larger. They moved deeper into the canyon system, following paths remembered by bone and blood. The soldiers pursued carefully, but the Tonkawa scouts didn't know this maze. By nightfall, the pursuers were lost among false trails and blind cuts of stone. They camped cold. No fire. Only pemmican and dried fruit, bodies pressed close against the bitter night. Ione found herself between Tovan and Kelton, sharing blankets and warmth. You did well today, Kelton murmured. You saved my uncle's life. I did what anyone would do. No, he said. You did what family does. There's a difference. In the dark, he took her hand. Calloused fingers, gentle and sure, the first intimate gesture between them. It needed no words. What happens now? She asked. We keep moving, he said. These canyons lead to a valley the soldiers don't know, a winter camp of our brother band. We rest there. Plan? Prepare for spring? He squeezed her hand. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe, Ione said, surprising herself. I want to be useful. I want to help. Then teach the children, he said. Letters, numbers. And teach them to read the papers that steal their land, she added. Knowledge is a weapon. Kelton smiled faintly. My grandmother said the same. A weapon worth sharpening. A coyote called somewhere beyond the canyon walls, this time a real one. The sound settled her nerves, a reminder that the world went on beyond men and their greed. In the spring, Redhorn said from the darkness, we'll need you to speak to this agent. About Hale, about the forged papers, about the railroad's crimes. Will you do this? Yes, Ione answered without hesitation. Even knowing some will call you a traitor to your own race, Redhorn said. Even knowing men like Hale will never stop hunting you. She thought of Cale Thorne, of the future they'd planned that vanished like mist at sunrise. Yes, she said again. She thought of the woman she used to be, selling books and pride just to buy a few more miles of road. That woman felt like someone else now. They were hunting me anyway, Ione Calder said quietly. At least now I'm not running alone. No, Tovan agreed. Now you have family. When exhaustion finally took her, Ione felt the day settle deep into her bones. Another bridge crossed, no longer a protected guest, but a participant. She had drawn blood in defense of the band, claimed the danger as her own, made herself a target alongside them, yet wrapped in shared warmth, listening to the slow breathing of people who had chosen her, she felt no regret. The railroad would come. Nothing could stop that. But maybe, with evidence, testimony, and the slow grind of law, they could shape how it came. Maybe some sacred places could be spared, some lives saved. A small victory carved from what felt inevitable. Tomorrow they would run again. But tonight, in a cold canyon beneath endless stars, she was exactly where she belonged. The keeper of stories had found her own, written in gunpowder, courage, and the clasped hands of new love. Spring would bring new trials, but spring was still far off. For now there was winter, survival, and the fierce joy of no longer being alone. Spring came late that year. Ice clung to canyon walls well into March. When it finally loosened, green shoots pushed through the mud, and with the thaw came changes that tested every bond forged in winter. The makeshift schoolhouse stood at the heart of the combined camp, built from salvaged boards and buffalo hide. Inside, 20 children sat on blankets, carefully tracing letters on strips of bark with charcoal. Ione moved among them, correcting hands, offering quiet praise, switching easily between English and the Comanche she had learned through long evenings by firelight. "Remember," she told a boy called Hawk Feather, guiding his fingers, "these marks are power. They can tell truth or lies. You must know them to protect yourselves." Through the open flap, she saw riders approaching Bram Calder, one escorting a man in a federal marshal's coat. The agent from Austin had arrived at last. Redhorn met them at the edge of camp, Kelton and Ashkai flanking him. Papers changed hands. Voices stayed low. After an hour, Tovan appeared at the schoolhouse entrance. "They want you," she said. The agent was younger than Ione expected, earnest, with the look of someone who still believed law could mean justice. "Thomas Garrett," he introduced himself, standing. "Special Investigator, Department of the Interior. Mrs. Calder, Mr. Calder speaks highly of you." "Thank you for coming," Ione replied, aware of how she must look. White woman in native dress, teaching children, standing as if she belonged. "I understand you have documents relevant to my inquiry." She handed over the portfolio taken from the Army Scouts, along with her written account of Virex Hale's pursuit and the forged debt papers. Garrett read carefully, asking measured questions. "This is substantial," he said at last. "Evidence of conspiracy between railroad interests and military contractors, bounties on civilians, clear treaty violations." "You'll testify to this under oath?" he asked. "I will," Ione said, "even knowing it makes you a target. Hale has powerful friends." "He already hunts me," she replied evenly. "At least this way it means something." Garrett nodded. "There's another matter. Hale claims you stole money belonging to the railroad. He's sworn out warrants. The money was my husband's," Ione said steadily. "Left by his brother Eamon Thorne, who died in federal service. I have letters to prove it, if they haven't been forged too. I'll need to see them." As she turned to fetch the documents, she passed Kelton. He touched her arm lightly, just once. A quiet promise of support that carried the weight of the entire winter. What bound them now had moved beyond protection, beyond partnership, into something neither had dared to name. It lived in shared glances, held a second too long, in brief touches that carried meaning, in quiet evenings spent trading words, her teaching English, him guiding her through Comanche sounds. When Ione Calder returned with Cale Thorne's papers in hand, she saw Virex Hale riding into camp with 5 armed men. The sight tightened her stomach, but she kept walking, chin high. "Agent Garrett," Hale called out as he dismounted with practiced flair. "I see you've recovered our fugitive." "I've found a witness," Garrett replied evenly. "One with troubling evidence about your activities." Hale sneered. "From a woman who's gone native, abandoned civilization to live in this—" He waved a hand at the camp. "Squalor." "I see children learning to read," Garrett said mildly. "Families sustaining themselves through honest work. Where's the squalor?" Color flooded Hale's face. "She's been corrupted. Stockholm Syndrome. These savages—" The sharp click of rifle hammers cut him off. Warriors all around had raised their weapons. Redhorn hadn't moved, yet his voice carried authority. "You are guests here. Behave as such, or leave." Hale sputtered. "You threaten federal authority?" "I remind rude visitors of manners," Redhorn said calmly. "Agent Garrett shows respect. You do not." Garrett lifted a hand. "Mr. Hale, I've reviewed your claims about Mrs. Calder's supposed debts. I've also reviewed proof they're forgeries, sloppy ones." "That's absurd. The notary seal belongs to a man who died 2 years before the date on your papers," Garrett said. "Quite the resurrection." Garrett's tone hardened. There's also the matter of bounties placed on civilians, including women and children. Hale's hand drifted toward his pistol, then froze as rifle barrels aligned with his chest. "This is hearsay," he snapped. "You can't prove—" "I can," Garrett said, producing a telegram. 3 of your associates were arrested in Fort Worth yesterday. One spoke freely when faced with federal charges. Railroad money buying bodies isn't a good look. Something broke behind Hale's eyes. The polished man vanished, leaving desperation. "You don't understand. Progress demands sacrifice. These people block civilization." "Whose civilization?" Ione stepped forward, her voice steady. "Yours, where men forge papers and hunt widows, where sacred ground means less than profit." He stared at her. "It's not too late. Come with me. Say they held you against your will. I'll make this disappear." "No. Think what you're throwing away. Your kind. Your place." "My kind?" Ione laughed, sharp and brief. "My kind sold lies about destiny while stealing everything they touched. My kind left me to freeze because I couldn't pay. These people saved me without asking a thing." She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the beaded band. "This marks me under their protection. More than that, it marks a choice. I chose truth over comfort, family over race, honor over easy lies." She met his gaze. "What did you choose, Mr. Hale?" "I chose winning," Hale snarled, and went for his gun. Time slowed. His hand closed on the grip. Kelton moved faster than thought. Ulrich's ancient lance flashed, striking Hale's wrist with a crack. The pistol flew. Hale collapsed, clutching his arm. His men twitched, then froze under a ring of rifles. Slowly, they raised their hands. "I believe we're finished here," Garrett said calmly. "Mr. Virex Hale, you are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and the attempted murder of a federal witness. Gentlemen, lower your weapons." As Garrett's deputies, who had been waiting just beyond sight, moved in to secure the prisoners, the tension finally broke. Rifles were lowered. Shackles clicked shut. Bram Calder stepped toward Ione Calder, pride softening his weathered face. "Well done, girl. Naira would have been proud." He handed her a worn leather folder. "These arrived for you." Inside were letters from her aunt in Santa Fe. Familiar handwriting trembled across the page, relief that Ione lived, an open invitation to come home, news of work, safety, a life that could still be reclaimed. For a moment, her hands shook. "You could go," Tovan said quietly, reading over her shoulder. "A safe life, among your own people." Ione looked around the camp, at the children who ran to her with smudged charcoal letters, at Redhorn, who had risked everything for a stranger, at Tovan, who had become the sister she never expected, and then at Kelton, standing a little apart, watching her with eyes that carried both winter storms and the promise of spring. "I have my people," Ione said, folding the letter carefully. "They're right here." Later, as Garrett prepared to leave with the prisoners, he drew her aside. "Your testimony will be required in Austin. You'll need to travel with us." "I'll go," Ione said, "but I'll come back." He studied her, then nodded. "You know the railroad will still push west. This life won't be easy." "No life worth living ever is," she replied. Garrett smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you're right, Mrs. Calder, or should I say, keeper of stories." "Both," she said. As the federal party rode out, Virex Hale twisted in his saddle to glare back at her. His eyes still held poison, but also defeat. He had lost more than freedom. He had lost to someone he once believed was prey. That evening, violet dusk settled over the canyon. The band did not celebrate victory. They knew the Iron Horse would still come, that the old ways stood at the edge of twilight. But justice, however small, had been served. One corrupt man would answer for his crimes. some lives might be spared. In hard times, small victories mattered. Ione sat with Kelton on the canyon rim, stars blooming overhead while campfires below glowed like fallen constellations. Children's laughter drifted up on the cooling air. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live," he said. "Day by day, season by season, we teach the children both ways so they can walk between worlds when they must." He took her hand, calloused fingers gentle. "Hard times are coming, but we face them together." "Together," she echoed, knowing she meant more than survival side by side. "In the old days," Kelton said, "a warrior claimed a woman through ceremonies, gifts, trials." He met her gaze. "But these are not the old days." "No," Ione said softly. "These are new days. We make new ways." Then, simply, without ritual or test, only truth, he asked, "Will you stay, not as a guest or one under protection, but as my wife? To share my fire, my fate, my future, whatever it brings?" Ione thought of Cale Thorne, of the life grief had taken from her. That sorrow would never vanish. But grief, as Elkai had taught, was like winter. Necessary, not eternal. "Yes," she said, and felt spring take root in her heart. They were married a week later. The ceremony blended worlds, Comanche blessings and Christian vows, witnessed by the band and by Bram Calder alike. Ione wore Nira's dress and her mother's ring alongside Comanche silver. Kelton carried Ulrich's lance and spoke his promises in both tongues. As spring deepened, Ione stood again in the schoolhouse, now larger, filled with 30 children. On the wall hung maps where railroad routes had been shifted away from sacred ground, altered by testimony and stubborn truth. Small victories. Outside, Kelton worked the horses, preparing for the autumn gather. Ione's hand rested unconsciously at her belly, where new life stirred. A child of 2 worlds, carrying the future in its bones. The wind moved through the doorway, heavy with sage and possibility. Ione breathed it in, then turned back to her students. "Now," she said in careful Comanche, writing on the board, "who can tell me what this word means?" She wrote, "Hope." 20 hands rose at once, and in that moment, surrounded by children who would need both books and courage to survive what lay ahead, Ione knew she was exactly where she belonged. The Keeper of Stories had found her own. "Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. We appreciate you more than you think. If this tale stirred something deep inside, we invite you to remain part of this frontier of memories. More true stories of honor, compassion, and destiny are waiting for you here. Subscribe, share, comment, and thank you for riding with us today. Aviso Legal Barra Disclaimer. Our content is designed for artistic and entertainment purposes and may reinterpret historical themes using fictional touches. We apply AI tools thoughtfully, only to support production, while keeping human supervision over editing, emotional tone, and narrative coherence. We always comply with regulatory guidelines for AI-based media and avoid deepfake practices or identity manipulation. All supporting components remain legally sourced. Please ask for authorization before sharing or adapting any segment. Your respect makes it possible for us to continue telling meaningful stories.